year. Think about that. Touring, music lessons, teaching, doing all of those things. And the most he was able to crack out doing all of those things was this video. I want to really kind of talk about making money as a musician. And it's a topic that I'm really passionate about is us as musicians and generating income. I personally have been a musician producer full time for almost 20 years of my life now. I have worked across many different types, just about every aspect of like working as a musician, I've probably done. I mean, I've taught music lessons, I've taught in school, I have um man, I've produced, mixed, mastered, recorded. I've done YouTube channel in the music space that you're watching right now. I've done master classes. I've done so many different things. And so I think that and then of course creating plugins and creating packs and templates and all of those things like that. I've learned so many different things about being a musician and how to make money playing in church, doing, I mean, you name it, gigging. I've done it all. So I've learned so much about being a musician in today's time and how to um, make money and make a living and take care of your family. I have 6 kids, wife and 6 kids, 6 teenagers at that. And yeah, I've been taking care of my wife. We homeschool. She has been she hasn't worked an actual job because we joke she'd be like I ain't got no job. She hasn't worked the actual job in, man, 12 years. You know what I'm saying? Almost like a full-time job, man, like no. So that has been something that I've learned how to sustain myself and a large family in the music business and in the music industry. Um, and so it's a lot, it takes a lot. And so I found this really dope video that popped up on my feed yesterday with this guy that was talking about how his name is Sam Gutman. And you know what we're gonna do while we're here. What we're gonna do is with Mr. Let me get in here real quick. We're gonna go ahead and hit the subscribe button on this guy while we're here. Super dope channel. Looks like he's on the come up. Almost 4K subscribers. Super dope creator. I think that what he talks about in this video how he played. He's the touring musician for like Lauryn Hill. He's played for the Marleys. So this guy's a legit touring musician that's played for class artists. And so I think this is really dope. He's gonna talk about how he's been generating money as a musician. And so we're gonna listen to kind of his workflow, and then we're gonna listen to his workflow and how he does it, and then I'm gonna give you guys my hot take on what his vibe is. Let's take a listen to him.
How much money did I make playing in bars to 5 people versus when I played at Coachella to 100,000? How much money did I make teaching private students versus when I taught at universities? How much did I make when I played on a recording that got over 1 billion streams and went gold in the US? How much money do I make from YouTube? From you watching this video right now. I've been a professional musician for 15 years. I've done all kinds of things in the music industry. And in this video, I'm going to tell you how much I got paid for basically everything I've ever done. This is going to be like the history of my career through the lens of personal finance and how my thinking about money has evolved along the way. I'm going to tell you about things I quit, things I got fired from, things that were awesome, and it's all going to be kind of vulnerable, so I don't know, don't make fun of me. I don't know, whatever. You're going to do what you're going to do. So.
I'll start from the beginning.
I think my first experience of attempting to turn my love of music into an income started at 16 when I worked at a local music shop. I vacuumed the store, cleaned the bathrooms, rung out customers, etc. I got like $8 an hour, and I only ended up working there for like, I think less than a month. I actually got fired when I forgot to show up for a shift one day. There was a couple years in between that and my next real job in
So I that's one thing now I will say I never did. I did work retail. I worked for TJ Maxx, but I always wanted to work for Guitar Center. Like that was like a dream, like low key, but like I lived in Jackson, Tennessee, and the closest Guitar Center was in Memphis, Tennessee, which was like 45 miles away and an hour and some change. And I never really had the bandwidth to be able to go do that. But shout out to all you guys that got that job at Guitar Center and been working the thing.
And in that time, I did all kinds of bullshit. I worked as a cashier at BJ's, which I quit after 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, hide your kids, hide your wife. You know, As my man says, you know what I'm saying? You got a little bit of language in here. So just a forewarning precursor, you might hear a couple of words. So for those of you guys who are language sensitive, I'm not language sensitive like that. But I do realize that the name gospel is on our YouTube channel. So, you know, I have to be very explicit about that. There is a little bit of language in here that you'll hear from time to time. Light language. I don't think he says like the F word or anything like that, but you know, just be forewarned.
I did data entry for a pharmaceutical company, which I got fired from. I did street canvassing in Philadelphia, which actually I became a supervisor doing that. And I delivered pizza. And all these things paid like shit, but hey, I was a teenager just learning the ropes of the working world. Anyway, flash forward to like 2009, and my time as a student at the School of Rock segued into my time as a teacher at the School of Rock. I think I was getting like $15 a lesson, which for a 19-year-old in my first teaching gig, I guess was fine, but today I think it was kind of awful. And it wasn't too long before I
So he was making $15 a lesson teaching. I ran a school of music for 15 years of my life. And again, a lot of this is regional where we're saying where I was at in Jackson, Tennessee, the and then we're talking like now, daggum almost 20 years ago when I started the school. Um I was charging I actually started out $15 a lesson and then I quickly moved up to like 20. And then when I capped off, I finally capped off, and this was in the like early 20 teens. I capped off around $100 a month, which was like 25 bucks a lesson, because that was pretty much in the region the most I could charge for lessons at that time. Because I always would do my research to see what my competitors were charging. You know what I'm saying? And I could not charge more than what my competitors were charging at that time. At least I didn't have the space to feel the confidence to feel like that I could do that. So yeah, I started out, I was doing like 25 bucks a lesson at max. So that's really dope to hear that that was around that time he was probably doing that as well.
start teaching privately, which marks what feels like the actual beginning of my professional music career.
Let the real war begin.
In my early and mid-20s, my main source of income was teaching private lessons. My rate was $45 an hour. I had like 10 to 15 weekly students, and I drive all around to their houses, factoring in cancellations and like summer vacation and stuff like
Well,
that.
that makes sense. So he's 45 a lesson. I was like, dang, I got smacked. That was bad. 45 a lesson, and I was charging like 25. This dude was charging 25. But I don't know what time this could have been like 2019, 2018 or something. I didn't get the time frame in which he was doing this, but yeah, if I could have done 45 a lesson, I ain't gonna hold you. I probably would have still been teaching because I had at the time when I was teaching, I had at 100 at one point the highest level of students I had was 120 students coming to a physical location that I had, and I was charging $25 a lesson. You know what I'm saying? I started out for a minute when I first started doing the go around to other people and drive. That got old. Gas got expensive. That was right around the time the gas like prices started skyrocketing. You know what I'm saying? It just wasn't sustainable. So I think if I had done that, I probably would have charged more. But when I had a physical location, we was doing 25 bucks a lesson. And I had about 120 students at one point. And then eventually those numbers rose and fell throughout those years. And then, you know, kind of tapered off. By the time I closed the school down, we had gotten down to like, well, because I was closing down, I systematically closed down. But I say that last year of me doing it, I maintained a solid 30 students on per week. That was keeping me pretty busy. Then that got unsustainable because of other things I was trying to grow into. But yeah, that's crazy.
I think I was making like $20K a year from this. At the same time, I was doing various gigs in the Philly music scene. I'd get like 50 to 200 bucks or so per gig, and I'd have a handful of these per month for a total of like 500 bucks a month in random gigs. In this era, I also started doing regular church gigs, which is a common source of a regular check in the music world. I worked for many, many, many small churches. I think when I started, I was getting like 50 bucks a service, and it varied a lot, but at
Woo! My man said he was getting 50 bucks a service. He said he was getting $50 a set. And look at this, check this out. I'm excited to reveal something game-changing for us and for you as producers and musicians. I want to introduce to you Peculiar Sounds version 2. We've introduced standalone mode, allowing you to use it independently from any DAW. You can now blend up to 2 sounds to create rich and complex textures. We added in 2 brand new effects, the Lo-Fizer and the Mod Filter. The Lo-Fizer gives you instant lo-fi vibes with just a button, while the Mod Filter adds dynamic movement movement and flow to any sound you apply it to. And we also added the innovative new MIDI browser that provides you with hundreds of chord progressions, melodies, and drum loop MIDI files that you can drag straight into your DAW. And as a bonus, V2 now includes Sounds Off the Block expansion for totally free, bringing the total to over 400 patches. So as you can see, Peculiar Sounds V2 is not just an update, it's a revolutionary new plugin. So make sure you check the website right now and you can get your hands on this game-changing plugin. My man's is playing for a black church. We don't get into like race here, but that's a black church he's playing at. He's playing at a black, Cheese is playing at a black church. He's that guy. He's him. Okay. But he said he played for Lauryn Hill and Bob Marley. So obviously he's got some soul in him. And he doesn't look like completely like vanilla white. He's not like your vanilla white guy. But still, even the fact that he, was there, this guy played for Bob. This guy was making $50 a service. How y'all gonna do that, man, like that? He's getting 50 a service. You know what I'm saying? That's $200 a month. How do you live off of that? And that creates another conversation. I'm gonna soapbox for a second because that creates another conversation. Like, because I too did that, of course, the church musician gig thing. The most I ever made playing for a church was about $500 a Sunday. That was the most I ever made. No, a little bit more than that. Whatever $2,500 a month breaks down to per week or whatever. That was the most that I made. You can do those numbers, do those math for me. But $2,500 a month was the most I ever made as a musician. But I played for one church. I know I was making like $100 a week, storefront situation. You know what I'm saying? Played for another one where I was getting like 300, but they were taking out taxes and all of that other stuff. So I was taking home my take home pay was $280. And I had 6 kids. And so there's no way that you can sustain a family on even 20, especially a family my size, even at $2,500 a month. And so I remember that was the height of playing. Like cats would be like, yo, I make $500 a Sunday playing for XX church or whatever. And you'd be like, wow. And then I grew a little bit, understood a little bit more. And I was like, yo, that's kind of wild. Like $500 a week is $2,000 a month. It's $2,500 a month. No, it's $2,000 a month. That's only $24,000 a year. That's not sustainable. You know what I'm saying? And my man said he was making $50 a week. $50 a week trying to do that. Playing in a black church. That's kind of crazy.
I had a $120 a week church gig for several years. I also for a while had a gig.
120. Still $120 a week.
Piano in ballet classes at a local university for $100 a day, 2 days a week. So in this first era, I was clearing like 30 to 35K a year. Teaching was the bulk of it, and random gigs of various kinds supplemented the rest. I think
so in order to do this, that speaks to the whole thing. I've been in that space before. So when I was teaching, I wasn't just teaching lessons. I was playing for 2 churches. I was teaching music lessons, like I said, like 30, 40, 50 students a week. And then I was recording, mixing, mastering. I was fixing iPhones at a point for people. I was fixing keyboards. I was doing everything I could to keep making money, and that speaks a lot into where we are and what it takes to live a creative life. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of crazy to think about.
Was characterized by a sense of like, wow, I'm actually doing it. I'm surviving, and I'm doing only music. And that brings us to era 2 of my professional music career.
It's time to get serious.
In era 2, I'm getting into my later 20s. I had a decent sense of the professional landscape. I'm decently connected in the local scene, and my standards got a little bit higher. I became less willing to do anything for any amount of money. That ballet gig I had for $200 a week, well, it was an hour away from my house. It started at 8 a.m., so I was waking up at like 6:30 a.m. to get there on time, and often after having had a late gig the night before. So it didn't really fit into my life, and I ended up passing that gig off to a student. I cranked my teaching rate up to $60 an hour, and I stopped taking the lowest paying gigs.
Yeah.
Also, just by virtue of being more experienced and connected in the scene, the average amount that I was making per gig went up. I would do wedding gigs for like $350 to $500, and sometimes even as much as $1,000. I quit the 120-a-week church gig that I had had for years and picked up a 220-a-week church gig, but that gig didn't last for long. As a keyboard player, as you get into the more serious in the church world, it becomes more important to have like a legitimate gospel feel and vocabulary in your playing. And I never really had that. So I ended up getting replaced
The Cheese was playing at a black church. And he's like, yeah, they was giving me 120 a week, because, I didn't have those gospel chops, so they paid me, based on that, you know what I'm saying?
by somebody who did. And that was kind of a shame because if you're really good at the church thing, you can actually make a lot of money doing it. But it's okay. It was never really my thing musically or something.
Wait. Let's bring this back. Did he say what I just think he said? Hold on.
I ended up getting replaced by somebody who did. And that was kind of a shame because if you're really good at the church thing, you can actually make a lot of money doing it. But it's okay. It was never really my thing musically or spiritually, and so I let my church career come to an end. But my teaching career advanced a bit.
So my man said, he said, if you're really good at it, you can actually make a lot of money playing for church. Do you agree or not agree? Let me know in the chat. But I'll give you my spiel again. The most I saw was $650 a week playing for church. If you break those numbers down, $2,500 a month, multiply that x 12 months. You know what I'm saying? That's let's see, that was 20. So 10 months is 20,000, 25,000. That's 20. That's a little bit less than 30. That's like what, 30, like $34,000. About what he was saying. Yeah, it's about $35,000 a year. Ish. You know what I'm saying? Doing that, you add some extra Sundays and stuff in there, extra services. Rent nowadays, like just owning a house, like it's hard to find in this economy to find a house sub 2,000 in rent. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to rent a house or even an apartment, depending on where you live, sub $2,000. I mean, that's $20,000 a year that goes towards just your housing. And even if you find something like, 11, 1,200, you living in a different area, you know what I'm saying, that you can, where rent's a little bit lower, 7, 8, you find you a $900, $1,000, $1,200, $1,400. And we're talking about housing a family. We're not just talking about like you thugging it out, eating ramen noodles yourself. You know what I'm saying? But we're talking about trying to run a family. And grocery prices, like the way groceries hit nowadays, you know what I'm saying? And you're trying to provide for a family legitimately with a church check, you know what I'm saying? And your housing itself is only is $20,000 for the whole year. That leaves you another $10,000 roughly to live off of, to eat, to sleep, to drive your car, to do all of that stuff in. You know what I'm saying? That's not a whole lot of money. So I don't think I agree with him in the sense that you can make a living, because I tried to make a living in that area as a church musician. And I always found myself doing exactly what he's doing still. You know what I'm saying? Like trying to hustle it out, teaching music lessons, substitute teaching at school, working a security gig, playing for multiple churches. And there's something to be said about that. So I don't think I agree with that point. Maybe let me know. Y'all let me know in the comment section. Maybe y'all locking in 1,200, 1,500 a Sunday, playing at the average church, and you just living good off the church check. If you are, praise the Lord. We bless God for you. That's not everybody's story. Definitely not mine.
Teaching at 2 local universities. Now, this was appealing at the time because it felt like maybe it would actually be a road to something with my teaching. Like maybe I'd end up in a stable salaried position at a college, which at the very least would be a way to maybe be seen as finally valid in the eyes of society. Mm-hmm. But when you start teaching at the college level, generally you start as a low-level adjunct professor making like $3,000 per semester per class, which is pretty bad considering how much effort it is to put together a class. Now, I've actually heard that teaching at the higher level places like Berkeley can be a pretty good gig, but overall, my impression of being an adjunct professor at local colleges is not great. So this second era is characterized by doing all the same things, but at a higher level, charging more for teaching, getting higher paying gigs, and not saying yes to everything. I was making like 40, 50K a year, and that was starting to feel like a legitimate income, but also in some ways it kind of felt like I was just surviving. But by this point, I was starting to hone in on some of the subtler and more personal things about how I wanted to engage with the economy. Things like, for example, how does it feel working for others versus working for myself and being entrepreneurial? Things like that, nobody can really teach you. You just kind of have to get out there and try a million things and see how things feel. So that brings us to Era 3, which contains some huge unexpected plot twists. So now I'm into my 30s and I'm making like 50K a year doing the typical musician hustle. Now, 50K a year is a perfectly respectable, decent living for somebody who doesn't have a family and isn't living in an expensive city. But as I got further into real adulthood, I started to feel kind of not that great about...
And I think that's the point. You just about Now, there's some people, depending on what they say, they'll argue with you and say, you need 100K to breathe, out here. But typically, a good livable wage in this economy is somewhere in the 40 to $50,000 a year range. If you're making 100, you can really do well for yourself. But if you're talking about like really trying to like push through and make some stuff happen in this society, yeah, you're gonna have to make at least 50 to be able to kind of breathe, like, and have some leeway. Like I said, if your housing is costing you 25, $30,000 a year just in housing, that gives you if you're making 50, that makes you gives you at least another 20,000, $25,000 a year to just, enjoy life with, whether that's your, your car payments, your, what I'm saying, all of those other things like that, just leisure, and being able to actually save some money. If you can't make it off $5,000 a month, you especially that now some of that could be regional. You probably can't make it off $50,000 a year if you live in LA, Chicago, or New York. You know what I'm saying? Or some other places like that. You could probably make, depending on your family size and all that, you could live pretty good in Charlotte, North Carolina with $50,000 a year. You could live really decent. You can live decent, in my opinion. My opinion, especially if you take care of your finances, if you invest and you don't get in a whole lot of debt, then yes, you can definitely live off 50K a year. But 100 is always better. But like trying to live off of $30,000 a year, 25, I've tried that. It does not work.
My ass off just to make the bare minimum. I wanted to make more money. And I was tired of cobbling together a living from a bunch of random sources, none of which felt like they were really a road to anything. And I wanted to do real adult things with money, like maybe buy a house someday or save for retirement. But I just didn't see any clear route to that 50K becoming like 80K without doing things that I knew that I didn't want to do. Like,
Yeah.
I knew that I didn't want to join a high-level wedding band that was working full-time or take on like 40 private students. So for a while, I was actually toying with quitting, at least mostly. Like, I would always do music in some capacity, but I thought that maybe if I got like a tech job or something like that, it would take
Yeah.
the burden off of music to support me exclusively. And I may have done that if I hadn't gotten the random call that led to my current touring career. First with Miss Lauryn Hill,
call.
and then later with other artists like the Fugees, Sofia Valdez, and several of Bob Marley's grandchildren. If you're curious about the
Nice.
full in-depth story of how all that happened, check out my video, How I Got My First Big Touring Gig. And so that brings us to Era 3, which is what we're in right now.
Things about to get crazy.
When you play as a sideman for another artist, generally you get a day rate, or a day rate and a show rate. It varies depending on the artist, but generally I get
it's
$750 for a show, and $350 to $400 for rehearsal, and $350 to $400 for a travel day. So, for example,
So to people, I've never been on a tour. That's something that I was not ever able to do.
I played Coachella.
So I didn't get that. I didn't get that experience. So for you touring musicians watching, let me know in the comments section how realistic those numbers are based on what you've experienced. Let me know in the chat and in the comment section, like what is your experience? Because let's see what he said. He says 750 show rate. So that's per show. He said $750.
For a show, and $350 to
Let me see, what did he say? 350 to 400 a day for a day rate.
$400 for rehearsal, and $350 to $400 for a travel day. So, for example, when I played Coachella,
Okay, so that's dope. That's dope. Let me know. Let me know if that's realistic. If you've been on a tour, let me know if those are realistic numbers.
I got $400 the day before the show when I flew out, $750 the day of the show, and then $400 the next day to fly home. And that was in addition to $400 a day for a few days of rehearsals beforehand. My first year of doing this, I made around $40K from the touring, rehearsing for the touring, and recording with those artists. And it felt great to make that amount from just one thing. Although for the insane amount of hours that it took, part of me didn't feel that great about it financially. Although I definitely felt great about it as like a thing that I had gotten to do. I didn't have near.
So that's something to think about. Think about it. So he says that he went from doing like 87 different things, making $35,000 a year, down to doing one thing, making $40,000 a year. He said it felt good to do that with one thing, but it's still one thing. I mean, there's so many dynamics you can put into that. One thing that makes you the same amount of money that 30 or 40, they're doing 5 or 6 things do. But he said he didn't feel like that was worth it, because he had to put in, he still had, even though he was doing one thing, he was still putting in the same amount of hours to get the same amount of money. He's still doing several hour rehearsals. He's traveling all over the country, all over the world, so he's still having to put in hours on hours on hours, probably more than he would if he was working a 40 to, 30 to 40, 35 to 40 hour a week job. He's putting in more hours doing a tour. I've talked to a lot of tour musicians, and they say yes, there are 8-hour rehearsal days, there are 12-hour rehearsal days just to get ready for the tour. We're not even talking about like actual tour, call times at 3 o'clock in the morning and all of that stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's it's a life. So let me know how you guys feel about it in the chat, like tour life versus regular life or what have you. Would you much rather do one thing and put all of those hours in doing those one thing, or would you much rather like be doing the hustle thing of getting the experience of doing multiple things? I kind of like the multiple thing. That's just the way my brain is wired. Like it's hard for me just to do one thing for a long time. That's just me. Like if I do one thing for more than a month, I start to feel like unproductive. So I always am shifting gears. Hence why I'm streaming live today, like doing something different. I got to try something different.
Time for other stuff that year, but I did still teach and do other gigs, which brought in another like 15 to 20K for a total of 60K that year. And it felt like things were finally starting to look up. In my second year of doing this, one of the artists that I play for had a massive international hit. That's Praise Jah in the Moonlight by YG Marley. It went gold in the US, platinum in Canada,
Wow.
and got 1 billion streams worldwide.
Wow.
And for that, I got nothing. Well, not nothing. I got my day rate for the day that I recorded on the song, but I didn't get any royalties or anything like that. And that's fine because I didn't write the song, and that's how that works. However,
And that's something to also be mindful of as musicians. There are the sad reality is that even though there's other things like sound exchange and depending on how much of the contribution you had to the record as a musician or as a producer, you are due, you are due a portion of the songwriting, royalties on that, the publishing on that. You can have claim to that sort of thing if you have contributed a significant amount but you have to negotiate that thing when it's happening. You cannot come back after the song has got 58 billion streams and then you're like, oh man, uh wish I would have, I own this. You can't do that after the fact. So that's a sad reality.
a lot more touring generally. And I was even on an actual tour, meaning a months-long stretch of back-to-back shows where you live on a bus and you don't go home in between. And that was financially great because I was getting paid every day for the length of the tour. And more of those days were my higher show rate rather than my lower day rate. So in that second year, I made 65K from all the touring, and then another 20K on top of that from all the usual other sources, for a total of 85K that year, the most I'd ever made in a year. In one sense, that was great because it finally felt like an adult income. But I was a little conflicted because I knew that in order to keep that income going, I'd have to keep touring. And to put it bluntly, touring kind of sucks. I'm not going to go off on that whole tangent right now, but I'll give you all the dirt in this video.
It's worse than you think.
So this video has been kind of vulnerable, which on one hand is weird. I don't know why money has to be such this like sensitive and private topic. I guess in our society, there's this sense that the amount of economic value that we generate is like akin to our intrinsic value as human beings, which of course is bullshit because some of the most valuable things we do as people have nothing to do with money. But yeah, it's kind of awkward talking about this. Like there's still this part of me that has internalized societal messaging that maybe I should just grow up and get a real job. And so I'm afraid that people who have real jobs.
Yeah, that's good. Nate pretty much kind of gives his points in his reflection, but I thought I'd highlight like those different areas. I mean, the man was a teacher. He was a touring musician. He played in church. He did all of those things, and still never cracked $100,000 a year. Think about that: touring, music lessons, teaching, doing all of those things, and the most he was able to crack out doing all of those things, $65,000. And as he said, the only way to keep that up is to do that consistently every year. So that's one of the reasons why I'm an advocate for producers, engineers, people who are doing this thing in music to have multiple streams of income, to have investments, to start doing those things